Today is Wednesday, the 18th of October, 2017. What block height is it? 490,518. And today, Block Digest suffers a coup d'etat. We've got a new owner of the channel, Shinobi Monkey. You are the proprietor of this channel. Please state for the record.
It's my channel, and Chris ain't got nothing to do with nothing.
That's right. Anything stated on this channel, it has nothing to do with me. I don't endorse it. Like, it doesn't represent the views of anybody that is sane, frankly. So for the avoidance of doubt, Shinobi Monkey is the sole proprietor of this channel for the time being anyway. Right. Monkey, this is your show. I'm handing it over to you, taking up the reins. I might do some screen sharing, but that in no way implies that I endorse any of the remarks that are about to be forthcoming. Do you want to introduce everyone? Do you want to take a little stab at that?
Yes.
Who am I, for example?
We got Chris Ellis, obviously.
Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm just a guest on this show. Thanks.
Got Mr. Rick.
Hey, everybody. How are y'all?
Janine, as usual.
Guten Tag.
And Mr. Aknix from his mobile apocalypse survival capsule thing. That's badass as hell.
Wait, am I live right now? Oh shit.
Yeah.
Yep. Alrighty. So, do we want to dive into the first thing to argue about? What the hell is going through these people's head? Like, what? Like, I don't know who watching has or hasn't seen my Twitter rampage when I tried diving through the 2X mailing list, but these people are just sticking their head in the sand and completely ignoring reality. Mike Belshi goes to try to rationalize in this piece he wrote why, because 2X is just a simple surgical change to the block size, it's going to keep the network together, folks. He then goes on to try to equivocate SPV wallets as nodes, and that because there are more SPV wallets than full nodes, well, most of the nodes are just going to follow along, guys, and it's no big problem. Well, this is completely ridiculous because this is, one, inaccurate, and I'll go into that in a second, and two, this is just delusionally deciding that he speaks for all of the Bitcoin community. That simply because he runs a company, he gets to decide what you want. Now, back to the technically incorrect part. The 99 point whatever percent number he attaches to SPV wallets out there is complete horseshit. The number of actual SPV wallets out there that connects totally to node. They follow whatever that full node's consensus rules are. They don't just follow the longest chain. So where the hell is he getting this idea? No, it was just you cut out for a second, Chris. But where are these people getting this idea that everything's okay because they say it is? Like he just demonstratively showed a complete ignorance in how the vast majority of the software in this ecosystem works. And yet he's trying to dictate to all of us what software we should use, what consensus rules we should follow. I mean, this is fucking insane. Like he just went off on his piece here, talking about how 99% of the wallets out there will just blindly follow, and they won't. He's wrong. That's an objective statement of fact. So how am I, or how any of you, supposed to trust this man and what he says regarding to upgrades to this technology, this protocol, when his rationalization for it is literally based on falsehoods? Like,
well, I'm willing to bet that this man, Mike Belshi, has filed more IP than you have, Shinobi. In fact, pretty much anyone else on this, in this video.
Well, see, that's I really don't care about that because all the things that matter in this space are open source.
Well, I think it speaks a lot to somebody's credibility if they, invented HTTPS.
Yeah, but I believe the algorithm is proof of work, not proof of IP.
Oh.
And
he's not, but he's not, what he's saying is a group of businesses got together and they agreed to, sign for this to get through so that we could get SegWit through, because the community was at an impasse and it couldn't get, any further forward. And it was because of that agreement that we managed to get SegWit. And now this is the second part of the agreement. Those people put their signatures to it. The logic goes that these companies represent their customers, and therefore they, in theory, should know what's right for their customers and what's good for their customers. And so they all signed it on their customers' behalf. And plus you have a whole bunch of nodes on the network, quite a lot of them. I mean, I don't know about 99.5%, but a lot of them that just blindly follow, whatever the server that they're connecting to says.
Yeah, but see, the interesting thing is, most of the clients that function like that actually provided the ability for a user to connect to a node of their choice when users started screaming for that. And I mean, as we're going to see in a minute when we get onto it, like we've had a second letter denouncing the 2x agreement from an entire community of Bitcoin users, of businesses, of large social groups of users. Like they are clearly not okay with this. So where, before we move on, I just need to reiterate again, ask yourself the question, where the hell is this rationalization coming from? Because it's not coming from a logical place.
Well, quite a few of these communities have written one of these Medium posts, right? And have written one of these letters. They seem very well written, dare I say, even written by the same group of people, because they seem to be written in the same style. It doesn't look like, this looks like an Anglophone wrote this, right? Someone who speaks good English, is good at doing press releases, that kind of thing. Do you want to take us through, or does anybody else want to come in on this?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, like, this is a lot of people coming together, and I'm sure, there's a lot of smart people coming together. I'm sure they could word this document well, and I think it's worded like other documents coming from the area, because this is logic. This is where this side of the argument is coming from, in the sense that we agree on BIP's proposals, and it's open source, and it takes a while for these things to go through, and it's about logical scaling, where, his reasoning is, Mike Belshy's reasoning is that they need a 2 megabyte base block for scaling right now. And that's just not the case. We're not seeing that traffic. And even with supposed spam, when it comes through, it's still not really necessary. And, I think that these guys, they feel strongly about this because they use Bitcoin the way we're trying to come together, in the sense that it is money. It is something that we can have sound money. And this New York agreement, I think they stand in strong opposition, because that doesn't create sound money, what they're doing.
Yeah, they cite the agreement several times, actually. This is the meetup groups of Brazil and Argentina, right? Or the communities, I should say, of Brazil and Argentina.
And there's actually two of the community signatories are actually one of the biggest Facebook groups that did a public poll. You should be able to track that down, where they claim more than 90% agreement on renouncing this agreement. And there's also another large forum of comparable size with also similar figures in a vote they did in public.
They talk about the difference between an agreement and a proposal, and how the protocol shouldn't be changed with agreements. It should be changed with the beginning. It should be a proposal that you should put forward. It's not a Bitcoin improvement agreement. It's a Bitcoin improvement proposal, and
Right.
that's the reason. Yeah,
this was held backdoor. This like backdoors and Bitcoin just don't mix. Like I don't understand how they thought this was going to fly in this atmosphere. It boggles my mind. It's
And I
like,
also want to.
Let's get together like IP, IP in the form of asynchronous information, right? And let's keep that from the rest of the people, and let's make money off that IP. It all comes down to intellectual property over and over and over again. And open source just will always trump that, I think.
Yeah, and I also want to challenge this idea of there being an agreement, because let's go with the argument from many of the Sego2x people that these companies represent their users. Okay, let's go with that. But then who represents within the company? Who represents the view of the company? I mean, we've clearly seen with BitGo that there's pretty high-level people amongst each other, as we showed in a previous show. So who within BitGo gets to represent what the company then gets to decide to do with their users? Is it Mike Belshi just because he's the CEO? Is it the developers? Like, who within the company gets to, like, do they do an internal poll where they decide, okay, this is going to be BitGo's stance? Like, I don't think they've ever specified how each company comes to their position on whether they're going to implement so-and-so policy for Sego2x or not.
Well,
Yeah,
I just want to say that the BitGo is obviously a very good company. Mike Belshi is an upstanding member of the Bitcoin community. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, I was just gonna.
Wow. I mean, for a guy that's in love with intellectual property, I guess you could say something like that. But
haven't you filed some IP, Agnex? Haven't you ever filed IP?
I respected
no.
Belshi until the moment he told BTC Drac after the Bitfinex hack that Bitcoin will become custodial. Deal with it. You can have respect for who you want to, Chris, but I have absolutely zero respect for that man. And it seems that he is perfectly willing to attempt to just strong arm the entire community and ecosystem into forcing things in a custodial direction with the attitude, deal with it. Well, I'm not going to deal with it.
Yeah, Belshi better be careful with who ends up being custodians of things, because that can get companies in trouble.
Agnex, have you ever filed IP before?
I actually have not, and this has been something I've been contemplating as I've invented quite a number of things, and I just don't see it as a system I will willingly participate in. It's just there's patent trolling, there's all kinds of just bad stuff that happens. People claiming invention, claiming rights to things which are incredibly obscure or that have already been discovered before. It's prior art. Like you know, there's so many things like this that I think to you know make the stance that you're infallible and our IP is superior and we will always win is just absolute nonsense. And when we're talking about Mike Belshi, I mean, this is a guy like largely responsible for SPDY, which is like a higher level connection for internet backbones, which was proprietary. And I had a huge problem with this way back when. So I mean, this really doesn't surprise me that he's going to go and defend his position of intellectual property here. And you know, I think there may be more to this story in terms of IP alone than is led to believe.
Monkey?
Well, I very much, agree with Acnix on a lot of these issues, but ultimately my problem with this is more of a core issue of not so much the intellectual property and how they're trying to benefit that. It's the way they're trying to lie, to manipulate things through propaganda, and attempt to coerce people. One of the things that was pointed out in this letter from Brazil and Argentinian communities was actually the issue of replay protection. And they explicitly stated, which I agree with, that the entire perception of refusing to implement replay protection is simply to cause disruption and to attempt to coerce users into just relenting and upgrading to their software through a disruption of the system we are using now. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. This entire agreement is nothing but a huge public opinion by saying, we're these big companies. We represent everybody. Well, where are the user statistics? Like, throw out your user statistics. Do you actually have the amount of users you claim? Have these users actually contacted you to say anything? Have you made any attempts to actually make a direct outreach to your user base and see what their attitude is? Because I see absolutely none of that from any of these companies whatsoever. They simply seem to be speaking in terms of their business model, their profit margins, and haven't really seemed to, made any attempt to ascertain what their users think whatsoever. They're simply speaking to their interests, not their users.
Well, that's your opinion, and you're entitled to it. And so is Whalepools, who's asked to be added to the Knob2X list. We are free open source community, or free open community, I should say, of traders who are active in BT2 futures. These are the the chain split tokens that are featured on Bitfinex and now OKEX as well. For people that want to claim early their SegWit2X tokens. Right now, it's trading at a significant, price that's much, much lower than Bitcoin's. And they say that they oppose the NYA and support Bitcoin. So there you have it. Back to our host, Shinobi.
And they're a pretty active group in this space. They have a large, a large number of people in their community, and also they represent a large amount of Bitcoins in absolute terms as a community. They are very representative of a large number of traders in this space. So again, like here you have all of these community groups that actually do have wide reach into the community, the user base, that keep standing up and saying, we do not accept this. We do not consent to this agreement. And yet these companies still continue to rationalize, to attempt to propagandize this fucking perception that the entire user base is behind them and they agree with them. Well, where are these big organizations of users standing up and supporting this agreement? I don't see them anywhere. In fact, when I go look around for most of the people on social media in this space supporting the New York agreement, it's mostly Bcash supporters, who I would argue have a very direct conflict of interest, and they've already forked off. They've already broken off onto their own system, and now they're trying to exacerbate the system they left and cause more problems for it in supporting the New York agreement. And that's from the level of users in the community all the way up to the big public figures advocating it, like Jihan Wu and Roger Ver. So I mean, like, where are the users?
What do you think of Lana? Tell me what you think of Lana.
That is a complete stock puppet account. If you take that picture and you Google search for it, it's from a generic catalog of short haircuts for Asian women. That's not a real person.
You're telling me that Lana isn't real?
No,
I just gave her a follow Friday. I told everyone to follow her.
She's not a real person unless by some weird coincidence, the exact fucking model who is using her picture for short haircuts for Asian women happens to be in the Bitcoin space and be a Bcash supporter, which is a ridiculous assertion.
Can't believe it. You mean this one here? Is that the one?
Yep.
Oh, Rex. Absolutely Rex. There's so much astroturfing in this community. It's toxic.
No, stock puppets in Bitcoin? No.
Correct.
You know, what Janine was saying earlier about the employees of these organizations, those aren't sock puppets. And I don't, like we can't really see those guys stand up that much in what they want to say. And because probably these guys just stood up for them and they maybe fear some sort of, some sort of pushback from standing up and taking a stance against their bosses.
Yeah. All right, Monkey, host, where do we want to go next? Oh, I should also, we forgot to showcase Kyle. We're actually sponsoring Kyle pretty much now in every show because he does such good stuff. And he's saying Mike Belshie's post says there are 15 million SPV nodes. There are only 12 million addresses with less than $1 of Bitcoin.
Or with greater than. So yeah, so his math doesn't even
greater than. Yeah.
On top of misunderstanding how most of the software in this ecosystem works, his math doesn't even add up for the wallets versus Bitcoin addresses. Like the only way you can have that many users is through pure custodial wallets like Coinbase without a similar number of actual addresses on the blockchain, which is public and we can all check, as obviously Kyle just did.
Yeah, interesting.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, it came from Google. He's got an armchair captain it up, it seems like he lacks some of the fundamental understanding that's required to navigate the space.
Yeah, I think it's that word valid, really, that gets them. They don't, they keep wanting to go in the longest chain, but they don't ever really include valid. And it's these nodes that validate that really kind of matter, and they want to lump these 15 million SPV nodes together with that. It just like you're saying, I think there's a lack of technical understanding there as to what's going on here.
So is this going to be the new Bitcoin governance model, these three? That looks like it.
You know,
Very
I've
upstanding
tried.
members of the community there, I think.
Chris, didn't we see Elvis like a few weeks ago? I think he walked into a birthday party we went to.
Oh, he did. You're right. I did meet Elvis.
So that was Craig Wright.
Yeah, I've tried very hard to kind of give Roger the benefit of the doubt, you know, over the past year or so, because, you know, he really did do a lot in the early days of this community as far as supporting businesses, actually advocating things. But when I see him meeting with and collaborating with somebody who is just undeniably a complete con man, I start to lose that ability to give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, why is he dealing with somebody like Craig Wright? I mean, it's obvious he's a con man. He produced a forged signature to attempt to prove he was Satoshi. When he got called out on that, I believe BBC sent it was $5 or so of Bitcoin at the time to a address known to be controlled by Satoshi, with Craig's approval, in order for him to send it back and prove that he was Satoshi. He didn't. The BBC still has not gotten their money back. The number of like nuanced things that he tries to say to present this image of an intelligent person is just taking complex concepts and just bastardizing them, but using a very intellectual and verbose language that just projects that air of authority. And really what he does is he just takes that lexicon and just screams loudly. And because people hear these fancy words and concepts and the loud volume in his voice, they just assume, okay, he must know what he's talking about because he really seems to believe it. I find it very hard to believe that Roger, what is he doing? Like, is he really that clueless? Like, does he really not understand things to such a degree that he's just going to buy? Because if not, then I have to question his motives here.
What about BTC? Anyone see this announcement? Another exchange declaring what they're going to do in the event of hard forks. They're going to be basically doing similar to what the other exchanges are doing, where they're going to allow for two markets. B2X is now pretty much, I think, everyone agrees now that that will be the trading symbol for SegWit2X fork token. And but they do say that they may reallocate the BTC ticker symbol to SegWit2X token, depending on the decision that will be most convenient for the traders, apparently. So I guess that's their way of copying out and saying, actually, we'll kind of leave it to the whole industry to kind of figure it out after the event, but we're just warning you ahead of time that that might happen.
Yeah, I mean, they've done what a number of exchanges have done. They've kind of removed themselves from the situation and absolved themselves of responsibility because it's clear to them that this does not have consensus. And there's really nothing to do except take a side, which could potentially affect their business or their relationships with other businesses, or just step back. And again, as the signers of this agreement continue to assert that there is a super majority of businesses in the space supporting it, why do we see so many businesses on an almost regular basis now washing their hands of this situation, refusing to just state their support for it? Because it's not there. Because this narrative that they continue to push is nothing but hot air.
All right. Now, on the topic of IP, what do you think of this story? This actually was from yesterday. We only really picked it up today. Didn't really get a lot of coverage on Reddit. Seems to have gone under the carpet for the most part. But this is the story that a former Bitmain, basically the director of design, Yang Zuqing, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, is now founded a rival mining firm called Bitway, or Byteway, maybe. And yeah, so there is a legal battle over the patents of the serial power supply circuit for, Bitcoin miners from Bitmain. Shinobi,
Yeah, we actually we covered a little bit of this a while back when Wang Chung went on Twitter and said he was being sued by Bitmain. This is effectively this ex Bitmain engineer left Bitmain and established his own company and started producing mining equipment, which was used, I believe, to mine at Bixen and F2 pool. And now this group of people are being dragged into this patent lawsuit by Bitmain. And just to refresh your memory, the patent that this is the most insane patent in the world. It's literally patenting a basic circuit layout that is not only, if you really boil it down to the abstract design of the circuit outside of its application, it's just a circuit design. Like the idea that you can take a basic universal design for a circuit and patent it is insane. And now to move past that, this specific circuit layout design to deliver power to the chips has been used by literally almost every mining company in this space. Bitfury was designing and producing chips like this before Bitmain even incorporated as a company. And now Bitmain is trying to throw around this IP shit and kill their competition. And sorry I cut you off, Agnes.
This is the exact type of thing I'm talking about that just makes me not want to register like my inventions. Like this kind of shit with IP completely turns me off from the space. And I'm sure there are other inventors out there that are just like, well, I'll sit on my idea until maybe this looks better in the future, because I don't want to take the risk associated. I don't want to potentially get ripped off with my idea, and this lends to that. It's such a hard space to navigate as it is, being someone with original ideas, that this kind of crap just really makes it difficult. Like just to even go through the libraries of patents, to it's just such a mess.
Right. Well, I think it's a good sign that it's going through the review process and it's not like being all the way through, right? I mean, that's the way it stands right now, is it's being re-reviewed in China.
What does this mean for Bitmain though? Because they've lost one of their, big kind of developers in their firm. And then today also there was a tweet, yesterday from Dubina on Twitter, who was saying that a bunch of blocks were filled up on Bitcoin Cash, and then there was a doubling in volume and all this kind of manipulation.
Well, I mean, as far as Bitmain and the circuit patent, I mean, obviously, like one of their big selling points is their electrical efficiency. So, I mean, that goes out the window. Like, if they can't enforce this bogus patent, well, now other people can actually start producing their own chips and miners and compete with them. So there goes one of the things solidifying their position in a monopoly. And as far as this Bcash thing, I didn't get a chance to do more than glance at it. But if this is what Dima said it was effectively a huge pump organized on Bcash. A lot of money moved around on the chain, and then everybody stopped mining. So that unless you had your Bcash on the exchanges at that time already, you wouldn't be able to dump into the pump. So this is effectively just a price manipulation by the miners to try and pump the price of Bcash up and then prevent anybody from actually moving their assets to the exchange to sell if they want. This is just an unbelievable level of market manipulation.
Assuming it's true, yeah.
Yeah.
Patents are like I feel like they're a huge crutch to companies in the cryptocurrency space, because how the hell do you enforce them? I mean, like no one even has a handle on this ICO stuff. Like everyone's making an ICO and they haven't even figured out how to clamp down on that. Like, how do you think someone's going to stop someone in like a pseudonymous global network? How do you think they're going to stop people from just copying ideas? And by the time they've copied your idea, and they've implemented it into their own project, and maybe they've found a way to use it in a better way than you have, by the time that's happened, like you're lost, because you either have to innovate, you have to do something new, or that's it. So I think I'm surprised how many companies are like so willing to file all these patents, because it feels like it's just a disaster waiting to happen for them.
Well, it's a great weapon to keep people out of the space. Between that, large group of lawyers, anybody who comes up in, they get a lawsuit like this kid.
Well, that's an important point. This world is run by fear. Fear is your greatest enemy. It's the greatest enemy of the individual. And this is just another fear tactic.
So.
All right, moving on then to the Google story. So Google today announced that they're going to essentially create a new feature that makes it harder to reset your password. But the way this was broadly spun in, with their PR and their press, we should call this the fake news section, I guess, because it's just really public relations. Mm-hmm. It's not really news. They're basically allowing you to secure your Gmail account and your other Google Drive Plus accounts with U2F keys, which are physical, separate HSM, hardware secured, devices like a YubiKey, for example, like the ones we showed that were hacked yesterday. And they've actually had this feature for a long time already. But it seems to have been promoted also, I think, by ex-Googler Charlie Lee, was also showing this off. And my point is that this has existed for a while already. All they've said is that, okay, this time when you secure your account with a two-factor secondary device, we'll just make it more difficult for you to reset it. The motive, they claim, for implementing this feature is that there are certain high-profile individuals and VIP customers that use Gmail, like a former candidate for the POTUS position, who may get their accounts hacked, like journalists or anyone involved in political campaigns, for example, and therefore they need to have more stringent security. But this implementation has been has been there for a while. I feel like this is just an excuse for them to republicize their efforts. But this time we've got more stringent policies on resetting your password. So if you lose your YubiKey or two-factor, then you're probably going to have to go through, hopefully, something that isn't artificial intelligence or something that isn't automated. Like, hopefully you're not having to click on captures and like answer questions about your mother's maiden name. Otherwise, that's about as strong as Gmail is in terms of security.
Yeah, it really does feel like a PR statement, just been revelation of all the recent things with Wi-Fi and these RSA chipsets and all the risk associated with that. It definitely put out there the feeler of, there's problems out there with cybersecurity still, and Google, I'm sure, just like, hey, we've been doing this, it's new. Just don't look at the security issues.
See, like, that's what I find like so silly about this, because like Chris said, that this has been available for a while. Like, I've been using U2F with all my Google accounts since I got a YubiKey. But at the end of the day, if they have a mechanism to just deactivate that or reset it for you, well, then where's the security come from? Because now all you're talking about is how hard is it to trick Google into thinking that you're some other person, and you can just get it reset. So I mean, like, where is the end line security if it can just be overridden?
I think I know. AI, man. Everyone's been talking up AI. Like, maybe this is an AI use case. Hopefully we don't have to train it with like an hour before we actually get to that point, by pointing out like road signs and house addresses and stuff like that before they actually like let you log into your account again.
And you know what? The one PR story that you're never going to see from Google is Google has implemented end-to-end encryption in their email service. You know why you're never going to hear it? Because it would interfere with their ad revenue. If anything interferes with their ad revenue, they're not going to do it. And to be honest, I'm not super impressed with this new, what is it, advanced protection, I think they call it. I'm not really super impressed with it, because I mean, Gmail has been one of the, in terms of like just keeping you safe from the everyday hacker, it's been one of the more secure email services for a long time. And they haven't had that many problems outside of campaign managers and that kind of that kind of person. So the fact that they've added this advanced protection isn't, I mean, great job. You're doing a bit better than the phone companies, which, you know, are willing to accept any information. If they get random call, they'll believe it's the real person in a second, and then there goes your SIM card and your phone and all of your Bitcoins if you had any of that on your smartphone. So, but the one thing Google is never going to protect you from is itself. And anyone who piggybacks on Google, they're never going to do that.
Google's never going to protect you from Google. That's a good point.
And
I will also point out that it's 2017. I just wanted to point out it's 2017 and we still don't have end-to-end encryption built into the world's most popular email client. And even the creator of PGP himself, Phil Zimmerman, admitted in an article recently that he didn't actually use PGP. And the thing that gets to me about this is that Google have so much money in their slush fund. They have so much money. They could just like throw a team of developers on this and it'll be a rounding error on their yearly accounting records. Like, really, this won't even push the dial. They could easily implement PGP and bake it into, like, people complain about how PGP doesn't have good user interface. That's not the fault of PGP. PGP is the protocol. Like, you don't blame HTTP for having a bad interface, do you? That's because a whole bunch of companies came together and like built a whole ecosystem around it. I guess there's no financial incentive for building security. I guess these companies don't really care about building security because the customers don't demand it. And so, you know, the hell with it. Sorry, Agnes, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's just, yeah, I mean, your privacy is important. Like leaving these things open, having your smartphone just logging and recording everything you're saying, like, it will scare you from time to time. You will get ads that are so relevant to your current present moment in life that it can be shocking. And this kind of thing, it hasn't really been examined appropriately, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it definitely has like an effect or toll on your subconscious when you know that somebody's watching you the whole time. Like maybe you don't feel like you have a problem with it, but subconsciously there's something else going on when you know you're being watched like that.
Yeah, and I mean, what other vectors of attack does this open up? Like now, what if you're able to basically pay through Google Ads and target a specific demographic and elicit a certain response out of that subset of people, right? This is very murky territory, and I think people really need to reanalyze and start worrying about their privacy, because it could mean that the ads will literally scare you to death. Sounds funny, but I mean, hey, you know, do a little experiment. Take your smartphone, fresh wipe smartphone, get Google signed up and everything. Have load your normal email account in there and stuff. Then, you know, just try and say something out of the blue and see if you get ads that correspond to that. You know, kind of like white room your phone and see if you get ads as a direct result of a keyword phrase that you said in that room. And I think a lot of you'd be shocked.
Yeah, hopefully with things coming on the market like that Libra phone, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that, like the market will show like, you know, privacy is important, because right now it does seem like that business model is all about data gathering to try and sell you something, where if the market shows that privacy is important, then, you know, these people can start developing something for these customers.
I think that's a step in the right direction, but the market's actually catered to this other vernacular, this other kind of vertical so well that they've actually integrated facial recognition software into the ARM chipset that would be going into the Librem. And it's like, you know, like a lot of these people that are specifically privacy minded don't want to have this kind of Orwellian, like, what's your mood today, potentiality out of your smartphone. You just want to take pictures with it, you know, like, and I don't think actually a large portion of the population is using facial unlock either. So it kind of begs to you know, begs the question, why are these features in there? Like, what's the master plan here? Are we trying to get a smartphone in every person's hand so we can evaluate their facial expressions and lock them up if they have a pattern of strange facial expressions? Well, you know, I think someone actually got arrested in the London Olympics, or one of the Olympics actually. Was it? I forget which one. Like 4 or 5 years back for this. The guy had a stroke and had partial facial paralysis, and cops came and arrested this guy. So you can imagine.
It's definitely Orwellian. It's not cool.
Janine, talk to us about Proton Mail.
Yeah, so if you want an email service that does take Bitcoin, Proton Mail is one of them, and it's also end-to-end encrypted, because another thing that Google will probably never do is take Bitcoin, because I guess they do offer the option that you can pay for Gmail and then you don't have to deal with the algorithmic ads or whatever. I don't know how true that is. They probably do it in the background. Because another interesting thing about Google's AdWords thing is you can actually pay to not see any Google ads. But someone tried this recently, and what they found is that, yep, if you pay, you won't see the ads, but the trackers will still be going in the background, which, yeah. So, I mean, I think that's like the whole point of paying to not have the Google ads is to not have the ads or the trackers, but apparently you have to pay a lot more for Google to take the trackers away. Right now, they don't offer that. So if you don't want any tracking and if you want to have your email secure against the service that's providing the email, because then you can pay in Bitcoin and you don't have to deal with Google anymore.
You know, I really think we're rounding the end of the information era, and I think we're getting back into the computing era. I think we really need to shift the focus away from real-time data collection and building like petabytes and petabytes of big data stores just to run SaaS software on. I think this is a time of the past. I think we've gathered enough data. I think it's time to move on. I think it's time to fix the issues with Wi-Fi, to get and evaluate some of these fundamental low-level bugs. Like, I think it's time to like start just, you know, doing a good overhaul, doing good security, doing the hard work that just hasn't been done because of XYZ excuse and because of the ad networks or this excuse or that excuse. It's just, it's too much. Like, we need to have security. We need to have computers that work and work efficiently.
Yeah, you were making a great point earlier about just the wasted power consumption in that, where, you know, there could be a lot of saved power and saved emissions from that inefficiencies being turned around.
Oh, I'd imagine so. Just think about how bloated some of the software packages are. Like, why is a web browser 43 megabytes? Like, that's huge. Like, some of this stuff is just so bloated. And you look at the number of CPU cycles consumed every year by the same sets of software, and it's just increasing. Not quite exponentially, but it's just increasing consistently year over year. And what is the power cost of that to write that inefficient code that actually produces and yields less and less profit? What are the power costs there when we're worried about everything else, like climate change, like global warming? The biggest issue here is the amount of thermal energy released into the atmosphere. And we really need to work on cutting that down, because most of the energy that we consume is pure waste.
Great point.
Johnny, what's this tweet from Open Whisper Systems?
Yeah, so at the beginning I actually didn't see this until yesterday, but because that's when Open Whisper Systems responded, but Bitcoin Not Bombs actually tweeted saying that they wanted a Signal plugin that could work with the Brave browser and would not have to go through Chrome. And Open Whisper Systems responded that they're developing a standalone version of Signal, which is great because that means another way to get rid of Google.
Hopefully the market will keep deciding this, and then they'll notice and say, wow, we need to cater to these customers.
What happened to our host? Shinobi, where did he go? Oh, he's in the chat room. Wait,
Yeah,
you're talking to somebody.
I got into an argument,
Dude,
and
you met Frank. You met Frank. Frank is an old friend of ours.
I don't mean to kind of just take the spotlight on the actual show here and abuse that, Frank, but I do want to say something real quick with what you're kind of discussing in the main chat. Like when you say that Lightning Network is custodial, that's not true. It's all a payment channel is a multi-signature address that you have a pre-signed Bitcoin transaction to put on the main chain anytime you want. It is a Bitcoin transaction. It sends you the amount of money that you are entitled to that you can submit whenever you want. That's not a custodial model. And when we're saying in the chat that larger blocks are a custodial model, when you don't have the ability as a user to validate everything, to have the chain data, to have the unspent transaction output set yourself, you are just trusting somebody else's server. You have no way to enforce the rules that you are a part of yourself. You are no longer a peer. You are just a client that is querying somebody else's database. And when you just pretend that you can,
he's saying, who hosts it? Who hosts the payment channel, Shinobi? Is it AXA?
No, that's ridiculous. But when you just pretend that you can raise the block size infinitely and everything will be okay, that's not how it works.
But
because
who's hosting
miners,
so it's PwC then?
you are. It's just a pre-signed Bitcoin transaction. There is no hosting it. Both sides of that channel have the pre-signed transactions going up to the current state of balances that they can submit to the chain at any time, and it will be settled.
Both of you need to be. You can't do this with light clients, can you? You can only do it with full nodes.
No, you can do it with light clients.
No, we can't. We can't do it. We can't do it with ProTip, which is a light client. There has to be a server.
The only thing that would have necessitated that would before SegWit, because that would have allowed you to malleate the closure payment and sneak it into the chain, a previous one, without being noticed. But the way it works now, that the first closure has to hit the chain and confirm, and that closure is just an intermediate step. After that, like you have a pre-signed transaction on both sides that get the respective amounts. Okay, so it goes to the chain and it updates a multi-sig balance. And then the outputs of that are time locked. Well, when you move to a new state of a channel, the people involved, private keys for those second transactions that take what just updated on the main chain and send them back to their self. So when you have an old transaction submitted, that first one will confirm on the chain, but the person submitting it to the chain is not able to actually spend anything yet because his side of that is time locked. But if it is an old state of the channel, you have those private keys for both of those second transactions, sending everything back to the individual users. So when you see that he is trying to steal money from you, you can sign the entire balance of the transaction without any time lock over to yourself. Like there is nothing custodial about this model. And there's actually a very carefully structured mechanism so that if people try to rip you off submitting a previous state of things, you will see it on the chain before they can take any of that money. And you have the tools to take all of that money as a penalty for the other party in that channel trying to steal it. But when you let the block size just bloat to infinity, there are only so many people out there who will have that copy of the chain, of the UTXO set. And at the end of the day, like people like Craig Wright can lie and say that the private keys are all that matters all day long. But if you do not have that chain, if you do not have the outputs that are tied to your key, you can't do anything with those keys. You need the database that has the balance. I feel like
we need to get Alp on here, and we need to have illustrations and nice diagrams to show people of how this works. That's what I think we should do. And we should get Alp on. He's a developer, and he can explain this, and we can have proper diagrams. There are lots and sort of attempts at explaining Lightning Network online. There's also a good video by Elizabeth Stark, but I feel like for certain critics like Frank, you do need to like not have somebody that's connected to Blockstream in any way. You just need somebody impartial to come along and say, here's a nice diagram, here's how it works, here's how the public cryptography works. And so long as you trust PKI, as long as you trust Bitcoin, it's using all the same primitives that are in Bitcoin already. My understanding was just that the end user would have to have some kind of node. I mean, some people are saying no. I think Fubar Gorch is saying you don't. But anyway, I think we should get a developer in to actually go over the finer points, because my understanding was it would require, a company running a server and, the end user, there being some form of custody there. I don't know whether the private keys maybe don't have to reside on the server. I think maybe that was the trade-off. They get to keep the private keys, but a lot of the multi-sig address generation and the n-lock time, I mean, a lot of wallets don't even do that, light wallets, let alone full nodes. All that stuff hasn't even been developed yet.
Well, yeah, but the Lightning Network itself isn't live on the main network yet, because it's not finished. And like, this is kind of the thing, like that is a design aspect of it, is to have a setup where you will be alerted when you have this like person trying to rip you off with a previous channel state, and you have all the tools to immediately submit something that will confirm before them. That is like,
I think Frank believes that basically the only people that are going to be running these payment channels are going to be like Visa, MasterCard, and he sees this as like a competition from all these big conglomerates to try and control the new sort of blockchain technology, TM, and they want to come in and say, we can do 1,000 transactions per second and 4,000 transactions. And he just wants to keep it back to the old days of like miners, right? That's been working for 8 years. We don't need to change this. We don't need a second layer. And all you're really doing with Blockstream is Blockstream is coming in and saying, well, we'll do the faster transaction. We use our patent pending, or Lightning Network, which is actually a separate thing. But, in some people's minds, at least, all these people are kind of connected through Bitcoin Core somehow, and somehow it ends up being a conspiracy.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mean to be harsh, but like that's just not the case.
But here's the big difference between, because it seems like the same people who are advocating for a block size increase are then turning around and saying that Lightning Network is dangerous because it's custodial. It's the biggest difference is that, if, like, let's say we do get Lightning Network, no one's forced to use it. You can still use regular Bitcoin, and you never have to touch Lightning Network if you don't like it. Whereas if there's a block size increase, that's part of the actual blockchain, and if you're running a full node, you have to deal with that situation. And also I don't think anyone's ever said that the block size should never be increased. The main problem is that the processing capacity hasn't caught up, with that proposal. But once several years ago, people thought it was impossible or unlikely that, an ordinary computer would be able to download an HD movie less than an hour. And so all we need to wait for is the processing capacity to catch up, and then we can talk about block size increases. But
yeah, and I mean, like the last two in-depth research proposals from Bitfury and Cornell put the safe limit around 4 megabytes, or not the safe limit, around the safe limit around 2, and the extreme that we could probably handle around 4 2 years ago. Well, SegWit puts us comfortably at 2, with the potential of hitting 4 with second layer solutions like Lightning Network, which would increase the use of multisig. And this is the thing. We've now extended the block size up to the risky maximum that we can. So now we have to let this play out, let it get there, and see how that affects things. Like this is not just a simple flipping of a switch and there's no problems anymore. Like this is we have to actually see how these changes affect things before we can then go on and plan the next phase of changes. Because if you just start changing things willy-nilly here and there and not seeing what the ramifications are, well, then you have no basis in which to decide what's safe in the next step. because you haven't even seen the consequences of what you just did yet. Like this is an almost what $100 billion network at this point. Like you can't just start flipping random switches and pulling different pieces out and just expect everything to work perfectly no matter what. Like there is a lot of money in this, and we have to be careful and we have to be paced in how we start changing things.
Okay. Mr. Host, Shinobi, is it time for final thoughts yet?
Yeah, I think we're about there. I've been a little too ranty this week.
You need to take a lie down, man. Take a breather. Let Mike sort it out. Mike Belshi will sort this all out, and we will have a harmonized community by the end of November. That's my prediction today. We'll be singing Kumbaya. Yeah, big Kumbaya around the campfire, and we'll all get what we want in the end. Maybe it'll be like a 1.5 meg. Maybe we'll compromise a little bit. 1.5 megabyte block size.
We just had a 1.5 megabyte block. It's here already. Like,
That's not the base block size, and you know it. Not the base block size, and you know it. I want a 1.5 megabyte base block size.
An expensive
That's
node.
the compromise. Yeah, and a $20,000. All right, a $10,000 full node will piss off.
But wait, see no, SegWit isn't a good idea because Mike Belshi says we need high fees.
All right, it's got to be the walled garden effect. We just got to price everyone out. It's just make it the world reserve currency. Is that the Belshi plan?
The fees are both too cheap and need to be higher at the same time.
They're unfairly cheap.
Unfairly cheap.
Unfairly cheap SegWit.
All right, guys. I think we should probably wrap things up before I get triggered and start ranting.
Right.
No, we almost have.
What should people do if they liked what they saw today from this video?
Smash that like button, but only through voluntary smashing.
Oh, you nailed it. That's right. You can like and subscribe, but only if you want to. It's all about voluntarism on the show. Thanks a lot. See you tomorrow.
Don't
Bye-bye.
break your laptop.